you interested in voting in the student elections?
We're running candidates for both YouX Board and SRC.
Hope we can count on your vote.
If you're a long-time student of the university, I'm willing to bet you've come to dread this week when activists, hacks, and wannabe politicians shove leaflets in your face and pester you for votes. But what are they doing? What are they standing for? What is student politics and why exactly does it matter? Well, buckle up, because the edit is here to answer all these questions and more. So when we're talking about student politics, there are two major organisations that we refer to, the YouX Board and the Student Representative Council. YouX is the student union of the University of Adelaide. Student unions are organisations that exist on campus to promote the interests of students, and UX's own said purpose is to support and improve the experience of students at the University of Adelaide. To do this, they have a lot of tools at their disposal. Just some of the services and avenues of representation that UX provides for students are clubs, student media like On D Magazine and Student Radio, student care, an affiliate which encompasses services like Breakfast Club, student loans and grants, tax and legal support, the Student Representative Council, which we will dive into a little bit later, employment services, on-campus events, and fortnightly member lunches. The existence of UX is enshrined in both the legislation establishing the current university and that which establishes the soon-to-exist Adelaide University. UX, however, is still referred to in these acts by its statutory name, which is the Adelaide University Union, or AUU. In 2022, the AUU rebranded to the name UX, but it's essentially the same organisation in practice. UX receives funding from a variety of sources. Commercial operations. If you purchase anything from a vending machine, you're helping fund UX. Memberships, advertising, and SAF funding. If you're a student, then you pay a SAF fee as part of your enrolment. A portion of total SAF revenue that the university collects is given to UX to fund its services and initiatives. This is where UX gets most of its funding. In 2023, for example, approximately 88% of UX's income came from SAF. UX is run by students for students, is governed by a 10-member board of directors, all of whom must be students. If you are over 18, if you're a student, if you can legally hold a liquor license and you can legally serve as a director of an incorporated association, you too could be one of the lucky 10 who govern UX, providing you get elected first. Students run every year in elections as members of political factions. These factions on campus have changed over the years. The ones of note and currently represented at some level in student politics are Progress, an apolitical but in practice centre-right faction who advocate for the interests of international students. Rebuild, a faction with links to the right of the Labour Party. Activate, a faction with links to the left of the Labour Party. Grassroots, a left-wing offshoot of Activate with some crossover with the Young Greens, and Left Action, the Stupol branding of Socialist Alternative, which is a socialist political organisation. The current president of UX is a guy named Merlin Wang from the Progress faction. This is his third year on the board and his second year as president. Queenie Fan, also of Progress, is the vice president of UX. Nomika Matheswaran of Progress is the student media committee chair. Aiden Zhang Wang of Progress is the clubs committee chair, while Adeline Tang of Progress, in addition to both Nomika and Aiden, sits on the executive. Don't worry, we will go into what each of these positions mean. The other board members without specific positions are Liam Johns and Kyang Jenkins, both from Grassroots, Ellie Venning from Rebuild, Harry White from Activate, and Catherine Howes, the current Executive Officer of UX. Like our standard federal ministers, the office bearer positions, meaning the president, the vice president, the executive, and the committee chairs, aren't directly elected by the students. Instead, the incoming board meets ahead of their terms beginning to internally elect these positions amongst themselves. So what do they actually do? The president has a wide range of roles and responsibilities, far too many for us to list out in full, but ultimately they are the spokesperson of UX. If UX needs to be represented to its affiliates, the university, or the media, it will most likely be the UX President doing the speaking. The President is also the one responsible for steering the direction of the UX Board. Some notable AUU presidents who have gone on to do bigger and better things include John Bannon, a former Premier of South Australia, and former Prime Minister Julia Gillard. While most directors are unpaid, both the President and Vice President receive an honorarium. The President is paid $49,647 for their term, while the Vice President is paid $9,929. The President has always been paid, but due to a recent rules change, the Vice President presidency has also become a paid position. This change, passed last year, increased the President's honorarium, which before used to be $37,235. Notably, while the President can be paid by SAF funds, the Vice President can only be paid by revenue from other sources. One of the services that UX provides to students is student media. UX publishes 2 student media outlets, On-D magazine and Student Radio. Like your UX board directors and SRC members, your student media teams are also elected annually. Student media at the university has a long history. On-D is the 3rd oldest student magazine in Australia, whereas Student Radio is the oldest student radio program in Australia. Prominent former editors of On-D magazine include journalist Samantha Maiden, feminist writer Clementine Ford, and former South Australian Senator Nick Xenophon. The Student Media Committee is a committee of the board that is charged with monitoring the performance of On-D and Student Radio. It also deals with any issues, such as filling vacancies, and submits rules and policy proposals to the board that relate to student media. The committee has 4 voting members: the Student Media Committee Chair, the UX President, On-D editors, and student radio directors. Another service that UX provides, and I'm sure you're much more familiar with, are clubs. The administration of these clubs is overseen by the Clubs Committee. The committee comprises of the UX President, the Clubs Committee Chair, and 2 clubs representatives. Clubs representatives are elected annually by the presidents of registered clubs. This committee considers and approves registrations for new clubs, considers and approves grant applications, has the power to freeze inactive clubs, and oversees clubs' compliance with club guidelines and rules. Another important person to note is the Executive Officer, who is best understood as the CEO of UX. They are neither a student nor are they elected to the position, but they're responsible for most of UX's day-to-day operations, including finance, governance, and managing staff. The role of Executive Officer is one which is responsible to the board, and although lacking voting rights, is present as a voting member at all meetings of the board and committees. But things are a little different this year. Some vacancies on the board had to be filled, and as a result, the current Executive Officer was elevated to the role of a director with voting rights, in addition to maintaining their other duties. That's UX. So what's the deal with the SRC? The SRC is an affiliated body of UX, and is a democratic decision-making body elected by students, comprising of students. Think of it this way. While UX argues that it fills the role of a service provider, the SRC is supposed to be its political activist wing that takes bolder and stronger stances on issues that impact students. The SRC's self-stated objectives are to provide representation for and advance the welfare of students at the university. The SRC consists of 26 members who are elected annually. Unlike directors of the UX Board, all positions on the SRC are only elected for a year at a time. Adam Zhang Wang, the President is the chief figurehead and public face of the SRC. They have a range of responsibilities that include chairing its meetings, providing the UX Board with reports, and engaging with stakeholders such as UX and the university. Unlike the UX President, the SRC President is elected directly by the student body. For their work, the President is paid $49,647, the same amount as the UX President. Their pay was also increased by the change last year, also going up from $37,235. Some notable former SRC presidents include former South Australian Senator Natasha Stott Despoja, Stephen Mulligan, who currently serves as the South Australian Treasurer, and South Australian Senator Sarah Hanson-Young. Edward Archer, the General Secretary, is a public officer of the SRC. A public officer of an incorporated association's point of contact between the organisation and the Australian Tax Office and an authorised signatory for its bank account. The General Secretary has responsibilities including sending out agendas and taking minutes during meetings and acting for the President if the office becomes vacant. Both the President, the General Secretary, in addition to 3 members who are elected internally by the SRC, form the executive. Office bearers are advocates for the demographics or issues that their portfolio encompasses. This is usually in their name. The queer officer advocates for queer students, the education officer advocates for students regarding their education and academic concerns, the Waite campus officer advocates for students studying at Waite, and so on. The SRC gets its funding from YouX, and as a funded affiliate body, has a set of conditions that it must meet in order to get this funding. Should the agreement be breached, YouX reserves the right to suspend the SRC President's honorarium and/or halt all funding to the SRC. Both of these occurred in 2022. But even if the SRC meets all of its obligations as per the agreement, the fact that YouX funds it means that YouX holds considerable power over it. It can, if it wanted to, in effect force the SRC to toe its line or threaten to take away its funding and have it cease as an association. This also means that when the YouX Board and the SRC are controlled by opposing factions, there's almost certainly guaranteed to be conflict. Yes, there is a lot of drama in student politics. Some of it is over petty personal issues, some of it is over issues affecting students on and off campus. Some of it is downright crazy, as you'll find out in our recaps. And look, I get it. If your only glimpse into student politics is that 1 week every year where they hunt you down, shove flyers in your face, shout at each other, beg you for votes, I can get why you wouldn't necessarily want to be involved in that or learn more about it. But student politics, whether we like it or not, is important. To quote a 2020 edition of On D, there's a perceived disconnect between student reps and students, and every time students refuse to vote, it just means that the reps become less representative of students, and then this furthers the disconnect in a vicious cycle. These are your student representatives. They don't just work for the people who they can corral to vote for them every year. They work for all students, and that includes you. Thank you for choosing to stay informed with The Edit.